If you understand Bitcoin and you hold Bitcoin, you have won. You're going to step off the damn hamster wheel, get on board with a new life, and that's what's coming for Bitcoiners. Even a tenth of a Bitcoin going forward for a young person is going to be generational wealth. Bitcoin against gold, it kills it. Bitcoin against treasuries, slays it. Bitcoin against cash, it's not even, there's no sense doing it. Bitcoin against eggs. I mean, there's no place where Bitcoin doesn't just crush everything. I don't see a recession in our future. And the reason is because I believe they are going to inject incredible amounts of liquidity in this thing to keep this thing going right now. They are willing to make a bet. They are willing to let inflation run hot. We've already seen that. The Fed has capitulated. They are moving the goalposts. It's no longer just 2%. We don't know where it's going to end up. But in conjunction with that whole plan, we're going to see higher inflation in my mind. It's going to be secular. Some industries are going to be rocketed with inflation. But if you zoom out, if you really get out on planet Mars and look down on Earth here and you say, okay, what is the problem here? What's the problem? The problem really goes back to 1944, and it is the Bretton Woods Agreement. That is what is causing this.
Explain that.
Well, think about it for a minute. At the end of World War II, because of the fear of Nazi seizure of gold, much of gold was moved to America. Mm-hmm. Much of it was in London. As the war ended, repatriations took place. Countries began to siphon gold, or we siphoned gold off the world market because they needed dollars. They needed equipment. We were not a deficit nation. We were exporting we were the world's exporter of equipment, manufacturing capability after World War II. We had 20,000 tons of gold in our vaults here. And today we have 8,000. At the end of 1944, when the Bretton Woods Agreement came into effect, we discovered over a period of 2 decades what it meant, the Triffin's dilemma meant. And what that is that basically we have become an exporter nation of dollars. We have based the world currency on dollars. And those dollars have resulted over that period of time. The Bretton Woods Agreement wasn't even really finalized. The last nation was not in until like late 1950s. So the problem was, and it was pointed out at Bretton Woods, by becoming the world's reserve currency, we were going to export dollars, have a stronger than natural exchange rate dollar, and we were going to export our manufacturing, and we did. 2001 with China entering the WTO was the final nail in the coffin. Yep. So from the end of the period when they implemented to 1971, it was like 12 years. It only took 12 years for us to take all that gold that we had and just basically have it siphoned off, because countries began to realize, you know what, we were printing dollars at such an exorbitant rate that we could never redeem them for gold. By the time we got down to 8,000 tons, maybe, then they said, you know what? Nixon came on. He said, we are going to close the repatriation window. He severed all ties to gold. Basically, we've been on fiat currency ever since. And I'd say if you look at 1971, Paul, I think that's really the turning moment for America, personally.
Yep. Year I was born.
I've got T-shirts from that old buddy.
Awesome.
I was there. Awesome. I remember Nixon on TV. I mean, I was a kid. Well, I wasn't young. I mean, I was a teenager. I was driving and everything, and he comes on there. At the time, I didn't think anything about it. But you know something? Within a few years, my life sucked. My parents' life sucked.
We were talking about, this agenda with the Fed and recession or not recession. I wanted to play devil's advocate real quick, because historically speaking, in hindsight, we can look at all the way back to the War for Independence, that most of the wars are caused by, or most of the big recessions, which then lead to wars, seem to be caused by central banks withdrawing liquidity. And so I agree with you on one side, right? That it makes, and Luke, like, it makes no sense. There's no way we can have a recession. And so liquidity, it's either liquidity or die. On the other side, when I look at history, I say, like, this is the ultimate time for the Fed or central banks globally to withdraw liquidity and cause a crash. And this is what concerns me about this fight that Trump is picking with the Federal Reserve, because you're going up against some sort of powers that have been in existence for a long, long time that seem to be behind every single war we've had and every major recession we've had. So how do you square that circle of history, that cycle of history? Like, are we really going to break out of that this time? Or do you think we could have the rug pulled out from under us, which is sort of like kind of what we see illustrated by like the Great Takening and other forecasts that are doom and gloom that say that there's something major on the horizon?
Well, I think the last point that you brought up is important, because in my mind, we are in what I consider to be like the fourth turning. And if you follow Neil Howe, I'm reading his book again. And if you follow that, we're in that crisis mode right now. And it should peak. In fact, it should be within the next 3 to 5 years. We should be through this. And I think that we are at a point now as a nation. Again, I hate to use the word zoom out, but again, if you just step back for a minute and think about what Luke said and what I'm discussing today too. We are at a point now with $37 trillion in debt, a $2 trillion deficit every year. Remember Biden last year, $2 trillion. What's it going to be under Trump? $2 trillion. We've got fabulous five that will not be cut: Medicare, Medicaid, defense, interest, and you might be able to. You could have some wiggle room, in some of these, but Social Security and stuff. These five are untouchable. So we are going to be running this deficit. We're having trouble financing that deficit, and I think we're at a point now where you will either default, kind of like what you're saying, almost like a deflationary recession. That would be brutal. Or default on our debt, or print our way out of our debt, or there's a third option. And I think, truthfully, that the Trump administration is betting on this. They're willing to go through this short period of painful inflation, secular and state, and to get to the other side. And that other side that they're looking for is to get a growth out of a GDP growth out of this dilemma. And that's a really difficult needle to thread. But I do think that is their plan. And what would that also entail? What has Bessent? What are some of these people have already? What is Steve Moran, who? What is his new position going to be? He's going to be a Fed, maybe. He's in position right now. He's one of the candidates to fill the chairman of the Fed, and we'll see. But he has given great direction through the Economic Council to the president, and he has talked about a Bretton Woods 2, a reset, and so has Bessent. The Mar-a-Lago 2 Accord, whatever you want to call it. The thing that I'm trying to say is I think we're getting to the end stage, the end game here, and that what you're discussing means that they've made a decision in my mind that they're not going to, just like Luke said, they are not going to allow a recession. Here's another thing. If you have the stock market crash right now, we are toast. I mean, we count on those receipts. And without the stock market going where it is right now, I mean, we'd be in a lot worse fiscal position than we are. So that's just how I feel like it's going, and we'll see. I mean, I don't know.
Well, that sort of aligns with the crack up boom idea.
Yes.
Right. And I think there's a lot of validity there, and it would be sort of fitting because it's something that nobody alive today has ever experienced. So it has historical precedence, but it doesn't have a modern precedence. And so people would especially in the United States, would be like, what the hell's happening? And I think Luke kind of describes this as like Argentina with U.S. Traits or something like that.
That's a good point. I mean, because let's face it, I mean, the U.S. dollar, if the real issue when you think about what I was discussing earlier about gold and a neutral reserve asset, you have to realize that there's such a difference between a neutral reserve asset on a balance sheet and currency. And, the United States the mistake was attempting to peg gold to the dollar. And so what happened as, this Triffin's dilemma played out, we saw more and more dollars float out of the country, and we were forced to back those up with the underlying asset. And if you back your currency by a fixed commodity or a scarce commodity like that, how do you settle that in net trade settlements? It's a window that I don't think you can negotiate. I think the basic problem here is that the U.S. is the world's reserve currency. And maybe I don't think that's going away for a long time. But the idea of backing it by something, I'm not sure that can be done. So will these be freely floating currencies that float in international trade freely in order to determine a base rate? I don't know. But I don't see how going forward. For instance, let me ask you this. What if the U.S. basically had a global reset and they said, you know what, we're betting on Bitcoin. We're going to screw the world. All these central banks that have been collecting gold over the last 5 to 6 years and in hyper accumulation since the invasion of Ukraine and the seizure of Russians' FX reserves. What if the U.S. says, hey, we're going to go on a Bitcoin standard. We're going to screw you because you don't have Bitcoin and we do. Well, do they have Bitcoin? But let's just say that they accumulate. Let's say they take over MicroStrategy or Strategy now, and they accumulate the world's greatest position in Bitcoin. If you kept the system the way it is right now, you would lose all your Bitcoin over a period of 10 to 20 years. It'd all be gone because nothing would change with that dilemma.
We could go on for hours on all these theories, and I'm sure you and I and everybody else has done this in private conversations about like what's really going on behind the scenes, and are Satoshi coins, U.S. coins, or who knows, right? But I want to go back and talk to you about the 70s because you lived through it, and it sort of feels, it's not a match, but it certainly rhymes with especially this vision of going through a very serious, short, abrupt bout of inflation to reset the debt to GDP ratio in the United States. And if we're going to go through like something like that in Trump's term, it's going to have to ramp up and be violent and fast so that he can get to the other side before the next election. So what was that like? What was it like being an investor, an employee, just being alive at that time, living through a serious bout of inflation?
Yeah, it sucked. I mean, it sucked. My life was, I was a young kid. I was working, flipping burgers, I think. And it just sucked because, my parents, the same thing. Everything started to escalate and go up. But, at first it's like it's the frog in the pot of water. You don't see it. But all of a sudden, you just get this feeling like, what am I going to do with my paycheck when I get it? Where am I going to spend it? When inflation got up to like about 14%, I think, a 30-year mortgage at one time got up to 17, 18%. I remember a car loan at that time at 20 to 21%. So the whole world just started. And here's the real part of the issue was the fact that you remember within 4 years, they had the petrodollar system established. They had all the OPEC nations on board. It was a done deal. What did they have to do? They had to inflate the petro system so that it could accommodate treasuries. And what did that do? I went from gas at 20 cents a gallon or 25 cents a gallon to $2 a gallon. So imagine if it's $3 a gallon right now and it's $15 next year. $15. And here's the thing. And before I leave that subject, I will say another thing too. It affected people's mentality. Sure. I mean, you've got people that would get a paycheck, and what they do? They go out there and buy shit. You just buy shit. Sometimes you didn't even need it. I mean, there are probably people with extra refrigerators down in their basement, and it's stupid stuff like that. Once the money really breaks and people don't have faith in it, things change rapidly. Now, what happened? Finally, you got Volcker to come in there, and he was able to crush that through incredibly punishing interest rate raises. But the thing is, you can't do that now.
Right.
The debt ratio, I think it was 36% now, and you cannot do that in this environment. So
always leads me to, because I do the exact same analysis, and it leads me to, we have to have a radically appreciating asset on the balance sheet of the government, or else it just will not work.
Again, I honestly believe they are making a bet on those really, it's almost 4 industries. They're trying to get the idea of the chips, manufacturing back here. this idea of rare earths, which are critical, and energy, this infrastructure, if you will, in the U.S.
Do you think if they're successful in engineering an AI boom, providing the energy and making sure that all the leading AI companies are here in the United States, if they're successful in that, do you think that will engineer enough deflation that we wouldn't feel this inflationary pulse as a consumer as radically?
Absolutely. I think this could be successful in 3 to 5 years. So what happens in the meantime? We are going to get to experience some really unpleasant, unhappy times. And, what is it? What's the safety release here? How do you get out of this thing? What do? You do the same thing my parents did back in the 70s. They bought gold. I mean, I remember them bringing home coins, and stick them in the damn basement in rafters and stuff, and bury them out in the yard, or everybody was starting to look at gold as a way to preserve your wealth. I honestly believe that Bitcoin is the fastest horse in this race, that nothing's going to capture Bitcoin's rise over the next few years. And I think that if you're well positioned and you understand this market, you should be in anything that the government can't print. But I would strongly encourage people to be in Bitcoin as much as you can comfortably hold, and gold also. I mean, I honestly think that gold is a play to diversify your risk if you want to. I personally don't hold gold. I think that Bitcoin is the better store of value. And that's what I'm discussing here going forwards, a way to preserve my purchasing power. That's what I'm trying to do here. And you could make an argument for, some of the other world's assets, from art to collectible cars to beachfront property. But those are all a pain in the ass. I mean, they're all a pain in the ass. Gold's a pain in the ass. And it's a really pain in the ass if you stick a bar up your ass to cross the border. So, Bitcoin cannot be beaten. It is the apex asset in this battle. And if it's going to be a tumultuous 3 to 5 years, what do you want? You want things they cannot print. Bitcoin's the answer for me.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a great lead into the next sort of topic I want to talk to you, which is this sort of your foundational passion for Bitcoin. And you said, I'm not sure where you said it, but you said that you're a Bitcoiner and you've won the war, something to that level. Can you talk to us about the moment that you knew Bitcoin wasn't just an investment, but it was more of a mission for humanity? Like what was it about Bitcoin that put you on that track?
When you think about understanding Bitcoin and how difficult it is, and you think about how people go down the rabbit hole in the journey, I don't think there are many people that have an aha moment where they just get it. I have met one person who was a technologist, and like in 13 to 15, I remember listening to him, and he got it. He just he looked at it, he understood what this meant. It was something that he had already been thinking, we got to find a way to get that. And so he just went all in. He understood it. That wasn't me. It took me work. You've got to work to get Bitcoin. It's not going to be given to you. And once you do understand it, it's going to be work to keep it. It's very difficult to put your fist around Bitcoin and hold on to the damn thing. Now, it's easier in this cycle. Although today, Bitcoin's 109,000. It's the 26th of August. And I got a bunch of leaky lettuce hand simpletons on my X feed that are out there whining and bitching and stuff. They got their panties in a wad, and this is a small dip. It's like 20-25%. That's silly. You want to see volatility, wait for Bitcoin to drop down 50, 60, 80%, and then you're going to have a ride. So
Agreed.
You don't, the thing is, what I'm trying to say is there's no moment, but I do believe when I say that you have won the war. What I'm saying is, if you understand Bitcoin and you hold Bitcoin, you have won. And not only that, like I said, keeping it yourself in cold storage, you're free. You have no counterparty risk. Your risk is so limited, I should say, compared to any other asset on the planet. So if you get it, you put it in cold storage, you hold on to it in your fist, and then you study it so that you never have a doubt. And you never think about trading, margin, leverage. You just hold Bitcoin. you will create generational wealth. You will live, because I'm just assuming people like yourself that are a lot younger, like I said, I've got t-shirts as old as you. Well, you know what, for anybody younger like yourself, it's going to be a glorious orange future in front of you, and you're safe. You got it made.
Well, first, you're always welcome back, because anybody who calls me young, I love it. Secondly, I agree with you on so many points there. This cycle, as wonderful as it has been to eclipse 100,000, has been a bit frustrating for me, because, and I'm not sure exactly when you got into Bitcoin, but when I got into Bitcoin in 2017, it was all people that were there to fight the system, that wanted, this was the way we were going to pull the rug out from under central banks. We were going to pull the rug out from under never-ending wars, and there was that mission. And so much of what I see today, you said lettuce hands, right? It's like people that are just, they're not taking the time to understand the mission. They're not taking time to understand the philosophy of Bitcoin, and they're just buying it because, the government said this is good now, and I can make some money. So I'm concerned about, this is the only thing that pushes back on the idea that the 4-year cycle's over, that we're just going to be accumulating now forever, because I feel like there's a lot of weak hands out there that aren't on the mission. And I think being on the mission is what could change humanity. So I'm wondering how you feel about that, and how that relates to this idea of, Bitcoin fixes this.
Yeah, that's a really insightful lead in. I mean, that's a really important topic. I'm glad you brought that up, because I agree with you. I'm on board in the same direction that you are on this. I have real concerns going forward. And, Bitcoin will die if people do not support it. Bitcoin at the time when Satoshi wrote the original protocol, I can't remember how many lines of code or how big it was. It wasn't that very big. And there have been multiple changes and upgrades throughout the period of time. People have nurtured Bitcoin. And without people involved in self-custody and holding Bitcoin in order to prevent derivative products on top of Bitcoin, and the possibility of everything from paper Bitcoin to incredible unravelings of leverage in the future, and there are so many there's so many parts of that question, because you could zoom out and you could say, well, just look at the ETFs. Look at these Bitcoin treasury companies. They are, in my mind, a threat to Bitcoin if people do not understand how important it is to both run a node and to hold Bitcoin in self-custody. It's critical. Why is it so important to run a node? Because it maintains the health of the network. It strengthens the network. It creates the opportunity for you to be a sovereign individual. Every human being that interacts with the blockchain must do so through a node. When Satoshi was there, the node, the mining, it was all occurring on a computer, okay, all in one unit. He never understood where this was going as far as mining pools, the centralization, this current controversy over those the Bitcoin core developers and knots. I run knots. I am a knots supporter. I do not believe that spam should be on the network. It's a money protocol. It's not for data transmission. It's not to put your fucking JPEGs of rocks, pigs, dicks, whatever the hell it is you're sticking on our chain. That doesn't belong here. And it used to be at one time that core was aligned with that idea of preventing that. Since 2023 is when it changed. And I can point to the bad actors in the space in my mind that enabled that. And I can also say that it has been not in Bitcoin's benefit. So in my mind, if you've made money in this cycle, Bitcoin's what, 110,000, 109,000? People that got in before, if you were in the last cycle or the cycle before, give back, run a fucking node, and figure out yourself if you're going to write knots or core. Bitcoin's a protocol.
Yeah.
When I say core or knots, I'm talking about the software implementation to run the protocol. That's what I'm discussing, and it's very important. So I agree with you. I think there are risks out there, and we have to win this war, and you have to fight. Humans have been fighting for as long as there's written history.
Well, you're obviously a fighter, right? I mean, you've been a pilot in the Air Force.
Yeah. No, I
you've
was
worked
Navy.
Navy. Sorry.
I'm sorry, but I just got to correct you
No, I'm
because
sure I understand that's a hot
an Air
topic.
Force pilot, an Air Force pilot can land anywhere. Okay,
Right.
but a Navy pilot,
has
when
to
you
land
take
on that
off
carrier.
from the carrier, you have to come back. You
Yeah.
must come back or go in the water. So
That's right.
yeah, there is a difference.
There's a difference.
Navy pilot.
And you've worked underground in mines. You've worked in oil fields. I know a little bit about that, and that is no easy job.
No.
So you're naturally a fighter, from what I can tell. But you're also obviously an artist. So that's a really unique combination between somebody with the willpower to be a person who will fight and the discipline, but at the same time be creative. So with that much of a diverse background and life experience, has that had an influence on your Bitcoin philosophy? Or has it helped you relate to Bitcoin or your vision of how Bitcoin could change humanity?
I like that last part of what you said, the vision of how you could change, because I do have that. I've tried to do a series of things called the Bitcoin Life because I want people to be able to picture what I'm talking about when I say Bitcoin gives you freedom. And when I say we've won the war, that's what I'm discussing. The idea of what comes afterwards. Mm-hmm. I believe Bitcoin will be successful. I believe we will win this war, and I do think that you are going to see an unbelievable future for us Bitcoiners going forward. It's going to be incredible. And you're going to have wealth transferred to people that are some of the most ethically and morally aligned people on this planet. And they are builders. They're going to build things. They're going to do stuff. And I see a world where you're going to have time stretch out. I don't like that low time preference. How I try and picture it is this. For me, my time has stretched out. I don't give a shit about so many of the things that people are concerned about. They don't even affect me. Like Lisa Cook, if Trump's going to fire, I don't give a shit. I don't care if he fires all of them tonight. It means nothing to me. I don't care if they print. I don't give a shit. They could print as much money as they want. And guess what? Just makes my purchasing power go up and up and up. I can prove that. You can look at it, any chart. You can put Bitcoin against gold. It kills it. Bitcoin against treasuries, slays it. Bitcoin against cash. There's no sense doing it. Bitcoin against eggs. There's no place where Bitcoin doesn't just crush everything. So what is your future going to be, Paul? Like I see you've got some fishing rods and stuff back there. Well, guess what? I want people to understand that it has nothing to do with being like a conventional artist, or they see the paintings behind me and stuff. Look around my studio right now. It's not that. It's the idea that you're going to be able to do the things you want to do with the people you want to be with and have the time to do it. You're going to step off the damn hamster wheel, get on board with a new life. And that's what's coming for Bitcoiners. And the no coiners, you know what? They're just going to shed a lot of crocodile tears. And you know what? At this point, there's enough information out there. If you're still sitting on the sidelines and you're unwilling to investigate in Bitcoin, you know what? Goodbye.
Yeah.
I'll just, have fun staying poor, and I'll try to help you if I can as the world evolves.
So you've heard Bitcoin is the new gold rush by now. As world leaders on all sides have endorsed it as the future of money, and now you're looking to get started, we'll show you how. It's actually easier than you think. First, go to your nearest Byte Federal ATM and turn your cash to coin. Byte Federal has over 1,200 locations around the country with the highest daily limits. Go to our website, bytefederal.com, to find the nearest ATM to you. Log into any wallet, then create an account, deposit your US cash, and instantly convert it to Bitcoin. That's it. We are the only US manufacturer and operator in the Bitcoin ATM industry, and our US-based live customer service is second to none. Go on, give it a whirl, and don't get left behind. Click the link below.